Hello and welcome. I'm Amritanshu and you're watching Law of the Land on Sabha TV. Today we bring to you the issue around wildlife protection and the existing legal framework for it. To discuss the issue, I have with me Mr. Ashok Kumar, Vice Chairman of Wildlife Trust of India, and Saurabh Sharma, wildlife lawyer. Now for the headlines. India is among the top 15 destinations for crime against wildlife. The government plans to empower forest officers with investigation powers. The draft proposals intend banning use of leg hole traps, the trap used to catch big cats. India is among the top 15 destinations for crime against wildlife in the world. The estimated value of global trade in wildlife species is over 112,000 crore rupees, which makes wildlife trade as the third largest organized international crime after narcotics and arms trade. At the core of this trade is Vietnam and Laos.
The tiger may have become the fountainhead in the fight for conservation of wildlife, but trade in other wildlife parts in the country is a lucrative business due to high gains and low crime detection probability. This is despite a stringent wildlife protection law. Victims of wildlife trade include elephants, snow leopard, common leopard, one-horned rhino, pangolin, brown bear, several species of deer, reptiles and corals. The Indian subcontinent holds over 15% of the world's plants and species.
Well, the illegal wildlife trade is the third largest illegal occupation in the world after drug trafficking and arms. And it's a growing trade that is a very, very lucrative business. So you can think of India as a sort of supermarket where all the products are available. And most of these products are valued outside our borders, in other countries. There is some use within India.
Laos is recognized as both a source and transit country, while Vietnam is a transit hub for illegal wildlife trade. The economic value of illegal wildlife trade is determined by cross-border factors. Wildlife is poached in one country, stockpiled in another, and then traded beyond the South Asian region. Let's look at the reasons behind the market for wildlife trade. Wildlife species and their body parts are used for making food, fuel, building materials, healthcare products and items of religious beliefs.
Because mostly the media highlights saying tiger trade is very high. Let us say leopard trade is very high, rhino horn trade, ivory trade is very high. Nobody speaks about butterfly trade. Let me give you an example. Butterfly trade globally today is illegal trade is to a tune of $2.5 to $3 billion. So nobody is talking about butterfly trade, or let us say about reptiles. There's a new emerging trend of trade in, say, spiders. So at the same time, there is a lot of loss of other species which is happening, and we have to be tuned to that.
Tigers and leopards are killed and trapped for claws, bones, skins. Rhinos are poached for skin meat and for religious rituals in countries like Vietnam and Laos. Elephants continue to be killed for their ivory. Otten skin is used as trimming for coats and garments. Musk deer is hunted for musk pad. Chiru is hunted for wool and chato shawls. Snake skin is used for belts and medicine. Arowana fish is traded for their value in decorative instruments.
It's partly superstition and tradition. For instance, tiger parts, tiger bones and so on, and eyeballs and whiskers and so, are all valued in traditional Chinese medicine. Now, as the years go by, the economies grow, people become more affluent. So instead of 100,000 people being able to afford the medicines made with tiger bones, we now have potentially 2 billion.
Medicinal plant trading is also an area of major concern, as much of this trade is hidden and less is known about it. 90% of the plants include over 8,000 species of medical plants which are smuggled from India to Nepal and China and some parts of Pakistan through porous borders. Wildlife protection in India has been facing three major problems. Problems in terms of manpower, no surveillance machinery available, and surveillance sectors and the wildlife protection sanctuaries are frequently attacked by poachers as there is no kind of mechanism available to protect these wildlife buffers. Once the act is in place and the machinery is in place, these problems will be solved. Raj Kamal, Rajya Sabha TV.
India is the first country to have a separate law on wildlife protection since 1972, which made all the wild animals as government's property. As per the law, any activity involving kidnapping, gifting or poaching animals for food is considered as a crime. My question to you, Ashok Kumarji, sir, the first point is that there's so much trade that's already happening, and it's not just the tiger. Tiger has merely become the fountainhead as of now. But 15%, India holds 15% of the biodiversity of the entire world.
Yes.
Given that, do you think there is enough strength and will in the government to actually act and ensure that this biodiversity is protected?
You see, the will is there, but putting the will into field in actual practice takes a process of law, because India is ruled by the law. So irrespective of what your intentions are, they have to be translated and put into a format from which first the steps which need to be taken, and so that innocent people may not be harassed. So precautionary measures are also
the way the trade is moving compared to the lawmaking. Are we keeping pace?
We're not keeping pace. Law has discovered over a period that there were lacunas in the law, there were loopholes in the law. So they have been plugged by several amendments to the law, and one more amendment act is to be passed, which pending, which is
will sooner or later come to the fore.
Sooner it will come there.
I'll bring in Mr. Saurabh. Saurabh, the medicinal plants, and especially, there's so many other things which are covered under the term wildlife. But before we go to that subject, the surveillance and manpower issue, you are dealing with the legislative and fighting for this entire act. You are involved at the Supreme Court level, the High Court level and the other court levels. Where do you find yourself actually not getting enough or drawing enough power from the law? Where do you find yourself limited?
First of all, I like to clarify that forest officials are empowered as such. They have investigative powers and much more than the police officials, right? Secondly, one of the great help which they can derive from the law is that the power to take down confessional statements, like in NDPS or Customs Act. Those powers are not properly being exercised by forest officials. Sometimes they say that the concerned official, like the ACF or above level officer, was not available or he's far off, and we're not able to record the statement of the accused person within time, which is admissible as such, which in cases of police is not admissible.
How successful has the law been in convicting wildlife criminals?
That is what happens when the investigative process is not properly up to the mark. And naturally, it has an adverse effect on the procedure and the prosecution case and the final conviction also. Because
has there been any conviction?
There have been, but very few, compared to the extent and the law, the trade.
And sir, how many years have we had this law?
From 1972 onwards.
72, so onwards. Which is nearly 60 years. No, about 50 years.
Yes, and try and imagine before 1972, each state had a different law, and there were laws which were not really enforced. So 1972, when the law was, it was brought to public notice in Vigyan Bhavan. I was in Calcutta at that time working, and I specially came and listened to the person who had drafted the law, Dr. M.K. Ranjit Singh. I listened to him and I went back very happy that at last there is a law, but after some years I discovered that having a good law and putting it into the field, putting it into practice, having trained lawyers, people who understand how to use the law, there was still a lacuna, there was still a gap. And it took many, many years for the gap to slowly close. I would not say that it's fully closed. Very many people, cases go on for years. There are various clever lawyers. Since they have the money, they can find good brains to tell them how to dodge the law, how to prolong the proceeding. And there have been cases where a person has been charged with a case with sufficient evidence, got bail. Bail is a right. And after having got bail, the person actually died. So all he suffered was the original arrest.
Saurabh, the Supreme Court judgment, the recent judgment, banning tourism, what is going to be the implication?
See,
does it at all help, or are we going the wrong way?
you see, the implications will, I feel, will come as we see the course of the day, because right now it is not proper to, in fact, the case is, one thing is, it is still pending with the Supreme Court. But it could have the implications of maybe for or against, depending on the situation at that time. See, it's very difficult to, at this stage, say what are the beneficial points coming out of it.
What is your take on it, sir? Because you've been involved on both the sides, you know the plus and minuses, you know, and you've been working on the ground for a long time now. The implications.
The implication, my view is that wildlife tourism is a beneficial subject, in the sense it draws attention, it takes public to wildlife sanctuaries, it creates a public demand and pressure that wildlife should be protected. Supposing no one could visit any wildlife sanctuary, how would the love and need and understanding in the mind that yes, these animals need to be protected, this
the awareness.
Awareness, the ecosystem needs to be protected. But you can have too much of a good thing. And in some instances, one or two instances which I have observed with my own eyes, a tiger wanting to climb up a hill in the evening after drinking water, 7 gypsies were blocking the way till the tiger growled. I told my gypsy driver that, look, this tiger is going to jump into one of the gypsies and probably kill a human being. Create a gap, let the poor tiger go. Tiger roared actually finally. A gap was created, the tiger ran up the hill in a blur. Nobody actually saw the tiger because all we saw was a blur. Now, that is the kind of excesses which also have taken place. Say, moderation in a sensible manner, not against wildlife tourism. As we rightly said, this creates awareness, it creates love for wildlife and for the wild places. And the experience of wilderness. The experience of wilderness is actually...
People need to actually experience and get connected to it.
Get connected.
Yeah. On that note, it's time for us to head into a break. When we come back, we will talk about the proposed amendments to the Wildlife Protection Act. Welcome back. The proposed amendment to the Wildlife Conservation Act seeks to empower the courts to take cognizance of the reports filed by the forest officers. The amendments also seek to ban the manufacture, sale and use of leg hold traps used to trap animals. The government wants to make the law more stringent as the existing law has failed to achieve its objective.
According to the Environment Ministry, there seems to be no reduction in the incidence of wildlife crime, as these are perpetrated by organized international gangs of criminals who have sophisticated networks spread across the country and abroad. The current penalties have failed to act as a deterrent, with few convictions having taken place since the law came into force.
The illegal market, the people who drive illegal market, largely govern it with different factors. If there is no demand, they try to create a demand. And the recent example is Vietnam, where rhino horn demand has been created in a superficious name, saying that rhino horn is good for cancer. And this has led to more than, I think so, 400 rhinos still have died in South Africa. And the pressure is mounting towards now India and Nepal.
Let's look at the proposed amendments to the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972. The draft proposal seeks to ban the manufacture, sale and use of leg hold traps mainly used to hunt animals like tiger and leopard. It seeks to include electrocutting as an offence, as electrocution is one of the means used to hunt certain wild animals. The draft proposal seeks to include within its ambit all scheduled animals, even if they are not found in the wild. The amendment seeks to allow scientists to conduct research with the permission of Chief Wildlife Warden. The proposed changes include prohibiting trade in peacock tail, feathers and articles and trophies made from it. It proposes to empower the Forest Department to ask the magistrate to allow an accused to be kept in custody of the Forest Department for the purpose of investigation. It also seeks to provide the Wild Crime Control Bureau WCCB similar powers to that of a Narcotic Bureau NB. It also seeks to impose a legal obligation on all officers to assist each other.
Number one, he has to maintain two families. They are the lowest paid staff. Okay, Forest Guard is the lowest paid government staff in the country. They live in isolation. They are still with stick. Whereas the poachers have gone so far.
As of now, the real challenge before the Forest Department is the 30% pending vacancy in protection staff. The Forest Department is also struggling to acquire more powers for themselves as the violators are aware that the Forest Department on its own cannot file an FIR against illegal activity. The forest officials have to depend on police to take case forward. As a human beings, we are all involved in destroying the wildlife heritage knowingly or unknowingly. These wildlife animals are part of our natural heritage. It's our responsibility to protect and conserve these animals for the welfare of ecosystem. Raj Kamal, Rajya Sabha TV.
Since the Wildlife Protection Act seeks to protect both plants and animals, the definition of habitat is sought to be widened to include the natural homes of specified plants. This essentially means, Saurabh, that once you include plants in natural habitat, which essentially means that if an endangered orchid is growing at a farmer's home, even that stands protected. Is that
right.
so?
Yeah, that's right. And in fact, this is the welcome thing, because nobody has stressed on the part of the medicinal plants as such. Animals were always there. There have been schedules have been modified at times, but as far as the medicinal plants are concerned, no stress has been laid on their protection. Whenever there are environmental clearances, I don't think there is any provision with respect to the protection of the medicinal plants.
Have you come across any cases relating to destruction of medicinal plants and trade? Even one FIR or even one?
Not to my knowledge.
Not. So I'll bring you in, sir. I'll bring you in relating to the WCCB.
Yes.
Giving certain more powers. Will it help? Will it not help?
It will greatly help.
How will it help?
You see, instead of being just an office in Delhi and branches, one officer and not enough people there, that they can directly get associated with it and actually go into the field and do some of the things which Forest Department of the state concerned, because the role of the Forest Department is to preserve the forest and the habitat, but the crime aspect has sometimes get overlooked because of the shortage of manpower, resources, training. So WCC was created by a report of the prepared by the Ministry of Environment and Forest. It's called the Subramanian Committee report. And I happen to be the member secretary of that committee. So we traveled 6 weeks all over India, taking notes on everybody. And finally, the draft was approved by Dr. Subramanian and went before the government, and the government created Wildlife Crime Control Bureau. It should have more teeth, more manpower, more resources to have the reach, which is a very specialized area of work. It will greatly help.
Yeah, and I'll bring in Saurabh, allowing scientists into the forest. Now, why and for what?
You see, research is a component where the scientists are contributing in this field, and they need permissions from Chief Wildlife Warden and other authorities. And at times it is very difficult to get such permissions and within time. So if they are allowed in a better say in the research part, or in fact there is another aspect to that which I want to add, because the scientists have come into the picture, that is the use of the report of a scientist as evidence. That is also part of this.
Okay.
And this is a big problem which is being faced because there is one specialized agency, that is Wildlife Institute of India, and the forensic lab is the only lab maybe which is giving reports. And all the samples which go there, and there's a lot of time being consumed because there's only 1 or 2 persons who have to go to actually to the courts and depose with respect to the reports. So once such reports become admissible in evidence, or something like section 293 of the CRPC, right? So when their evidence is acceptable in a court of law, these experts need not waste their time, and they can spend more time in the research part.
Okay, so that's why it is. Second, I wanted to ask from you.
May I add something here?
Yes, yes.
It was decided some years ago that the forensic lab of Wildlife Institute of India is one place in one part of India. Crime takes place all over India. And if all samples go there, there is a backlog built up. In the meantime, the trial is halted. So it was decided that there will be regional centers. It has not happened. This is a very serious lacuna. And some of the agencies say that they have to actually pay a fee to Wildlife Institute of India. So it says, okay, we caught a criminal, we got the evidence, we got everything, now we have to pay to get proof. So this should be waived to government agencies that they have to pay. There should be more regional agencies because trial is halted. Because the defense lawyer will clearly say, how do you know this is a tiger skin? Well,
Yes.
Not tiger skin,
absolutely.
but certainly there are very many other parts. How is a bone? How is it a tiger bone? Where is the proof that this is a tiger bone?
Exactly. These are nuances of law that need to be only settled by a scientific report.
Exactly.
On that note, it's time for us to take a break. When we come back, we will show you an interview with former Director Project Tiger, Mr. P.K. Sen. Welcome back. My colleague Raj Kamal Rao spoke to Mr. P.K. Sen, former Director Project Tiger, and tried to get a point of view.
Sir, the act is in place. Many appreciate the act, but there is a lot of problems in the implementation part of it. Who do you see, who are the responsible persons for these kind of activities, sir?
The Wildlife Protection Act has given powers to the Forest Department because animal products or animals, wild animals, they are supposed to be, Forest Department is supposed to be the custodian of that. Now what happens? The police have been given equivalent power. You see, so they can also act, but their priority is not wildlife. If we go to the police and the police is receptive, then they may help.
Yes.
But not in all cases.
So what kind of judicial lacunas are existing in the implementation and the process of inquiring the violations of wildlife acts?
The law says the Forest Department does not file an FIR unless they go to the police for help. That is one condition. They can file a complaint case, whatever forest offences are there, including wildlife offences, direct to the court. Okay? The forest officers, how much they are qualified to file a complaint case or lodge an FIR. I don't think they are very well trained in that.
Sir? There is renewed thrust by the government to ensure implementation of the Wildlife Conservation Act, especially after news of Sariska National Park losing all its tigers poaching came to light. 55, Section 55, the point you were trying to make on the inclusion of Wildlife Crime Control Bureau in the list of people who can actually file a report and whose report will be taken into cognizance by the court.
Right.
This is obviously this is a move forward.
Yes.
But will it be effective, especially if there are not enough forest officers who are trained in the investigation and crime aspect, especially in the forest department?
I'll answer this the other way around. We stress that there should be more, because of the trade and all, there should be enhancement of the punishment part. But you see, the courts take a very stricter view if you are enhancing the punishment. So you will only succeed if your documentation is correct legally. For that, you need to have a search, seizure, arrest, which culminates into a effective charge sheet or complaint as such. So that will end how the witnesses are coming, and they are being, if they are they know their case, the forest officials and the police officials who are coming to depose, there are all chances of a successful conviction in such case.
There's another line, sir, which legally mandates all officers to cooperate with the forest officer. Now, this is an insertion in the draft amendment, the proposed draft amendment, right? Earlier, there was no such mandate. And since the police was the one who was filing the FIR and doing all the investigations, it was the forest department which had to continuously be after the police department. Now, in this situation, will it change by inserting this line which says it is legally a mandate by all officers of the state to cooperate in matters of wildlife crime?
It empowers, it shows a way. But once again, what will happen is that there is a need for them to understand each other, work with each other, and I think a training is very essential. The police is originally was meant to do certain crimes in the society of a different kind, of a different laws, not wildlife crime. So they have to be awareness, substantial awareness that this is also now their responsibility, and identification of species, how to proceed, how to write the charge sheet, how to take evidence. They know how to take evidence in the case of other crimes which they are empowered to do. But now they'll have to be specially trained to. So whenever the training classes are, police people should also be associated with it.
So it's a highly technical and scientific issue. Now, given the fact, especially you've got legal qualification as in awareness of the law as to what the officer, the prosecution agency can do, and second, awareness of the wildlife and its nuances.
Yes.
Is there any proposal or any possibility of training officers to bring them to this part, to this level?
Not just the officers, but every member, every staff member, right down to the constable. So
is there something available?
No, not yet in the substantial manner in which it should happen. Training classes like this, awareness classes are being held under One Rajya project of Wildlife Trust of India, where training is given. It was concentrated entirely on wildlife, that is forest department officials. Now we have to include police in this as well.
Can I add to this? You see, for police, you have like in the national academies or in state academies, they are taught about the crime scene investigation, different types of crime scene investigation, and the investigation skills and the scientific investigation skills.
Are there any specialists in wildlife?
But nothing is there as such
wildlife
in forest course of the forest officials or wildlife officials.
Thank you, sir, for joining us on this discussion. It's time for us to end the show. You can email your suggestions and comments to law.rstv@gmail.com. You can also watch our shows on the YouTube. We'll be back with a new issue and a new episode. Keep watching Rajya Sabha TV.